All right, we're recording. Okay, as a preliminary matter, this is John Brescher, Chair of the Town Government Study Committee. Permit to confirm that all members and persons anticipated on this agenda are present and can hear me. Members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Campbell Sutton.
Here.
Rick Atherton.
Here.
And we're anticipating Linda Williams and Tucker Holland. Let's see. Good morning. This open meeting of the Town Government Study Committee is being conducted remotely, consistent with Governor Baker's executive order of March 12th, 2020, due to the current state of emergency in the Commonwealth due to the outbreak of the COVID-19 virus. In order to mitigate the transmission of COVID-19 virus, we've been advised and directed by the Commonwealth to suspend public gatherings, and as such, the governor's order suspends the requirement of the open meeting law to have all meetings publicly accessible physical location. Further, all members of public bodies are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely. We'll get to this point in a minute. The order, which you can find posted with the agenda materials for this meeting, allows public bodies to meet entirely remotely so long as reasonable public access is afforded so that the public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. This meeting will feature public comment to those members of the public that have joined via Zoom. For this meeting, the Real Estate Assessment Committee is conveying, or excuse me, the Town Government Study Committee is conveying by video conference via Zoom app as posted on the town's website, identifying how the public may join. For Zoom meetings, please note that this meeting is being recorded to the cloud and that all attendees are participating by video conference. Accordingly, please be aware that other folks may be able to see you and to take care not to screen share your computer. Anything that you broadcast may be captured by the recording. All supporting materials have been provided. Members of this body are available on the town's website. The public is encouraged to follow along unless using the posted agenda, unless I, the chair, knows otherwise. Okay, now we're turning to the first item on the agenda. Before we do so, permit me to cover some ground rules for effective and clear conduct of business to ensure accurate meeting minutes. I, the chair, will introduce each speaker on the agenda. After they conclude their remarks, the chair will go down the line of members, inviting each by name to provide any comment, questions, or motions. Please hold until your name is called. Further, please remember to mute your phone or computer when you're not speaking. Remember to speak clearly, not like that. For any response, please wait until the chair yields the floor to you and state your name before speaking. If members wish to engage in conversation with other members, please do so through the chair. For items of public comment, after members have spoken, the chair will afford public comment to those members of the public that have joined via Zoom. Members of the public who wish to speak must state their names and be acknowledged by and speak through the chair. And finally, each vote taken will be conducted via roll call vote. So let's jump to the first item on the agenda, which we have as the approval of the agenda. So may I have an approval of the agenda as written? Okay, motion.
Second.
Made by Rick, second by Campbell. Any discussion on the motion between you two? Hearing none, let's do the quick roll call vote. Campbell Sutton.
Yes.
Rick Atherton.
Yes.
John Brescher. Aye. Okay, all voted in favor. All right, we'll jump to public comment, seeing as there are no members of the public and hardly any members of our committee on here. We can.
Now.
Sorry, that was a little snarky. Approval of the minutes of July 8th, September 2nd, and November 4th.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, motion been made and second. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none. All those in favor, Campbell Sutton.
Aye.
Rick Atherton.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. All right, so next item is the update from yours truly regarding our meetings with town administration and the advisory committee of non-voting taxpayers. And something else came up just on Monday, I think, that I want to talk to you about, and this was unanticipated, but I want to, I think this is I'm going to dive into this one first because I think it's just interesting. It's more of just a heads up than anything. So I got an email from Nancy Holmes, town clerk, asking if I wanted to be invited to a presentation by the company that did our the town's electronic voting at last year's town meeting, the company that organized that they are going to have a Zoom meeting. And I think Nancy's going to be on, Sarah Alger will be on, I think Libby will be on, to talk about possibly using Zoom for remote open town meeting.
I did read something about that. Is it Lexington that did that?
It's somewhere like that, I think. And
I didn't read the article, but there was an article, a review about how they did that, how that went.
It's presently, I don't believe it is allowed. I think they're trying to have they're tempted to have something go through the legislature to make it accessible. So I don't think there's anything to do, say, et cetera, but as soon as I am invited to that, and I said, yes, absolutely, I would like to participate, to listen, to see what it all says. I will report back, because that's fascinating, and it actually dovetails nosely into one of the things that I heard from the advisory committee of non-voting taxpayers. They were, I believe I previewed this, but they have been thrilled with remote meetings with Zoom, because of sort of geographic constraints, they've had the opportunity to meet throughout the winter, whereas they may ordinarily meet 2, 3, 4 times a year, generally in the summer. They've had the opportunity to meet more frequently. They are interested, and I don't even know who they would talk to about this necessarily, but for basically figuring out a way so that they can get a quorum via Zoom or remote. I mean, it used to be that you could participate via phone, et cetera, but you wouldn't count towards the quorum. And they're interested in perhaps continuing that, basically continuing the liberties that we have with the state of emergency. And it's an interesting aside. I don't know how many other committees or groups would be sort of impacted or in favor of that, but they were certainly interested, to say the least. The other, oh yes, Campbell, please.
So I would just like to say, I think, I'm not sure any more sure than you are, but I think there are going to be long-term ramifications from the Zoom meetings. And one is the accessibility by people who aren't right immediately here.
Yep.
The other, of course, disadvantage is those that are right here haven't really figured out how to participate in that way. I think it's just like the, outdoor eating that's going to be on the Board of Selectmen's or the Select Board's meeting tonight. It's just there's going to be a blending, I think, of Zoom and getting back to regular meetings, sort of combining those.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. So the other thing that I wanted to, about 2 or 3 weeks ago, and I had gave an update to the non-voting taxpayers. They were very interested in what we were doing, but they were more so interested in sort of the short-term rental bylaw and issues that's going on with Act Now. But that's another story for another time. But they were certainly sort of fired up about that. But they were just checking to see what we were doing, etc. One thing that I would say they seem to be focused on. I mean, their opinion, in my opinion, their opinion hasn't really changed. They are somewhat frustrated by the votes of the electorate when it comes to infrastructure improvements, things like that. But what was more interesting was that they started to focus on the idea of taxation without representation, that their voices are not, quote, heard at town meeting as much. That they can have sort of one representative there. I'm not sure what the solution is or would be for that, as they are not registered voters here, and so we're somewhat constrained. But it was interesting to hear that concern come up again more and more, and it may be a concern that is becoming more vocal as a lot of the seasonal residents spend more and more time here, but still don't become registered voters.
All right, John, I just joined. What's the concern? Is it the concern that the non-voting taxpayers have no voice?
That's the gist of it. They reiterated that concern to me, and it seemed to be, the concern seemed to be bubbling a little bit more. How
Well,
about
it's bubbling more. You know why it's bubbling more right now? because that stupid pool article is coming back in again, and it's attacking 90% of the year-round people in R1 and R5. And so they're beginning to get agitated that things are happening at town meeting they have no voice with. And that involves the entire Brant Point area, by the way.
Involves a lot of people. Yes, Campbell.
So I would just like to get back to the taxation without representation piece.
Yeah.
I understand some frustration there, but Nantucket is not the only seasonal second home community. I'm from one myself, Stowe, Vermont has a huge number of second homeowners, third homeowners, what have you. And they are still within an open meeting law, for town meeting, board of selectmen, that sort of, or select board, however you want to put it. So I think there's, and is it the pool thing? I don't know. Part of it feels a lot like some tension between people who have lived here for a long time that want to maintain a certain community feel and people who are purchasing or coming here now that want to have more of a modern feel, more modern roads, more modern transportation options, and more, more housing options for those who, affordable housing, if you want to call it that. But I like the, it has a lot of pizzazz, taxation without representation, but in their own towns, they vote and they have representation. And I think that there's an overriding piece here that goes with second home ownership. And I'm just wondering at the state level, what structures are in place that help limit that in communities, because I can't think of one community where non-registered voters have an overriding say in the voting locally. And so I feel that piece, and I think they do get a lot of representation, and maybe not in the way that they would like. But the reason that we need larger schools, we need to expand our sewer system, our water treatment plant, the reason we need to expand the landfill, all of which are things taxes are used for, are because of the massive influx of second homeowners to the island, which brings a demand for workers, which leaves us, it's a circle, which makes it so we need affordable housing. And then you've got kids that need educating, and it's all tied up. So the idea that their taxes, somehow they pay and don't get any benefit, I'm not in full agreement with, so I'd like to see what the state has.
Sure.
Because we're not the only town like that.
No, Cape and Islands come to mind. Yes, Tucker.
Yeah, thanks, John. So I from the times that I've attended the advisory committee of non-voting taxpayer meetings, I don't think that they're looking for overriding influence over the votes, as I think you, Campbell, you were just saying. I think it's maybe a little more representation in some fashion than, I think technically they're allowed to have one representative at town meeting. So for a group that represents 85% of the taxes, property taxes that are paid here, that may seem a little out of whack to them, understandably so. But I don't think they're looking for overriding influence. From the discussions that I've attended or participated in with them, and John, maybe this came up when you were there recently, I don't think their complaint is our tax dollars are going to these infrastructure needs and so forth. I think their complaint is not enough of our tax dollars are going towards these things, because I think the general feeling they have is, whether we're here for 2 weeks or 2 months, when we're here, we want things humming. Like we want everything working well. And if it takes a little more money to, make traffic work better or improve this road or, have what is required at the dump, we're willing to do that. So that, I think it's the no votes that frustrate them, not the yes votes.
I think that's right, Tucker. I think it's interesting that they would they would rather us spend more money on things. I'm not sure there is a simple solution. I'm not sure there is an easy or clear solution. I think it is worth asking perhaps the Cape or or Martha's Vineyard what they do. I mean, they're to a degree in the same boat that we are. I mean, I don't know that I'd go with Falmouth yet, only just to see what we have for open town meeting, but maybe worth pinging the folks over at Falmouth again as well to see if they have anything. Yes, Camel.
So I know that part of what we're looking at is also open town meeting, or what they call a town meeting versus representative town meeting. And from the research I was able to do, non-voting taxpayers, as they are today, like today, they could ask to speak. They don't become voters, but they could ask to speak at town meeting through the moderator. But in the representative form, it didn't seem as though that created some greater opening for participation during the, at the meeting, other than to be able to do what they can do now, which is to solicit the moderator for comment. Maybe one thing to look at is percentages, trying to make that non-voting representative more based on percentage of population, or do you see what I mean? Like maybe you could make it 2, or maybe you could make it 3 based on the percent. That would be a little bit fairer versus saying, well, you can only have 1.
But correct me if I'm wrong, but their person at town meeting, they still can't vote, correct? I mean, they're just off in the corner, being able to quote represent a group, speak for a group, even though they can't vote yay or nay on any of the articles. Am I getting that right?
That's correct.
That's
Okay.
correct.
Okay.
However, they are able to speak they're able to be recognized by
Right.
the moderator without having to get pre-approved.
Gotcha.
So, and then then I guess the question is, what is it that they are looking for in terms of, do they want more people to be able to say the same thing? Or are they looking for a greater voice, by having 2 or 3 representatives there that have different opinions on things? That's where, you sort of.
I don't want to speak. I don't want to necessarily speak for them. I would get the sense that they would be more interested in the result than the process, if that makes sense. That they would like to see various results, and if they can get to those results by a different process, so be it. If the same process gets, if all of a sudden the town this year votes for all the infrastructure projects, they may not be quite as concerned. Yes, Rick.
Yeah, I mean, this ties back to the open public sessions we had when the Brant Point guys all showed up and so on. And then just to remind us, this issue is not new. It's been around for 50 years. Every once in a while, it peaks up and someone says, what the hell, I want more, So it wouldn't be hard to add another speaker so they could have 2 guys that could raise their hand, or gals. And, that's just fine. You might face the next question is how you select them. Is this committee the only way? And
Right.
so on. So there's nothing easy here,
Never.
except to say the non-voting taxpayers could have two people who could raise their hand, and that's a SOP, but it's one way to deal with their concern. In terms of registered voters, that's a statewide issue. You know, the state isn't going to give us the authority to let them vote without every other community having the same authority or not having it. So we're whistling Dixie to get into that issue, in my opinion.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you with that one.
So, John, just to try and wrap up here, are we thinking part of our final presentation would be that an expansion to 2 members be investigated? Is that, and like you said, you know, how you have to work on how it works.
So I think that may be where we're headed. I think in order for us to sort of do a little more due diligence, that we would reach out to our reps on the Cape and Martha's Vineyard and say, hey, what do you all do for non-resident taxpayers in town meeting? What comes of it? Just to see, and if they say, oh, those knuckleheads, no, we don't care about them, fine. Or they say, oh, well, we give them 5 chairs at town meeting and they're allowed to voice their opinions freely. It would just be good to know. It's sort of regardless of what we wind up doing, but just gathering that information would be a good thing.
I could make comment on goals for town meeting. Would that be something that they could expand into? You know, how you have FinCom comments and planning board, or, you know, sewer department comments, or
that's actually a really interesting one, Campbell.
whether they put together a pamphlet addressing each of the articles and their thoughts on them or something.
Interesting.
To try and get out to the.
Just
Rick, go ahead.
Just to be clear, they're free to do that right now, and they can hand them out in the hallway like anybody else. The finance committee has a little special recognition in our charter and so on, and the planning board and the select board as people who, you know, sort of used to sit down front, maybe not anymore. Anyway, I'm just saying that's available right now, Campbell.
Okay. Well, I was thinking it'd be like to make it more of something that came out with the, you know, that was sent with the, you know, the paper copy, or maybe they could have it put in the Inky Mirror.
I think that's an excellent idea to consider.
Yeah. Well, all right. So my suggestion from here is that I'll reach out to the folks on the Cape and the Vineyard, get contacts and just ask them what they're thinking, and circle back, and we can certainly try to talk about this. I think that makes sense with everybody.
Provincetown might be an interesting town in that they have a very large second home population,
right,
with a smaller year-round population.
Right. Yeah, that's a good one too.
Who
Okay.
do you ask these things? I hate to have you loaded up. with
No,
all-
so I'm friendly with one of the aides for Dylan Fernandez, so I was going to start there.
Great. Yeah, great.
I was going to start with that one and see where that would take me, and then either reach out to Nancy Holmes for names of the clerks, et cetera, because they seem to be a wealth of knowledge too.
Okay.
Okay, so anyway, it was a otherwise a pleasant meeting with the advisory committee, non-voting taxpayers. They're very nice. They're always interested in what we're doing. So then circling back to sort of the item number 5 on our agenda, which was my meeting with town administration. When I say town administration, I refer to Libby. So I had after we spoke at, I think Campbell, Rick and I spoke at the select board meeting back in November. Libby asked to meet with me afterwards. We weren't able to get that together until January between holiday, COVIDs, PFAS, you name it, the world exploded. So I had a great about 20, 30-minute Zoom meeting with Libby about everything. that we've been doing, and where we're going and what she's thinking. And I'm gonna give you a couple highlights off the bat. One, I have in my inbox from Lauren Goldberg saying, shoot, I'm sorry, this fell off my radar. I will get on it. I will review the charter for the Town Government Study Committee.
Yay. That's
So
all I can say.
I am cautiously optimistic. Not that we haven't heard this before. Yes, Rick.
It might help. The one item we have related to the structure of town charter is Giorgio's memo on Park and Rec.
Hmm.
To forward that specifically to Lauren and say, just FYI.
So I will
Run that by me again. What did Giorgio say?
Giorgio, we've all circulated this, but I'm not sure, it's a little convoluted. What I follow what he said, this was several years ago, Linda. He said, you know, when the charter was the work group that met in 2012 thought about revising section 4 specifically related to Park and Rec. They didn't do that.
Yeah.
And he said, therefore, I'm going to defer and take the comments from the prior town charter committee, not the language. But it seems to me he was clearly admitting that the language was awkward, imprecise, and not clear. And it would seem to me we just ought to ask them to write it up in a way we think it should be, or in some way that it is clear.
So I'm going to jump in on that because one of the other exciting things that Libby told me involved Park and Rec. And I think this is all public info because she said she mentioned it at the school committee. But her general idea was that that she's planning on a major sort of revamp of the Parks and Rec bylaw committee department, whatever you want to call it.
It was a department.
Is the community school is going to be taking over the recreation side of things.
Oh, please. They've screwed it up all along.
Yes,
They
that
screwed it up.
that's not new.
Oh, no, okay.
That we cannot do that again. They have screwed it up over and over and over. They've double booked. They've moved people to fields that don't exist. They've screwed up everything. They've locked gates. We've had to track down people from that group to open the freaking gate for games that were scheduled. This is insane. They cannot handle the bathhouses, the septics, the whole 9 yards. I'll go back to the fact that the Diona septic overran because nobody checked it. This is stupid. This is not the way to revamp this. It's to put it back into its own freaking department.
All right,
So-
Campbell, go for it.
Excuse me, just to get an angle on why I said this isn't new, because this was attempted when, and it actually, I think, resulted in the previous administrator leaving Nice Gal. What it does is it moves funding into the community school from the town.
Yeah.
So it helps support and prop up the community schools program through financing. I can get you the past proposal, which I may have given out to you, and she may have a new angle on it. And that's, I'm totally open to looking at a new angle. But in the past, most community schools or community colleges are based under a Park and Rec department, not the other way around. Many communities have under their Park and Rec, they have, kids sports things and learning classes and a wide array of things. But as far as making a pyramid out of the Park and Rec at this point, unless structurally they're doing something different about the way the community school is set up, I am sort of in agreement with Linda. It's an awful lot to put. The thing is, Park and Rec is a huge item that keeps trying to be considered as a small bit that could be fit anywhere, whether it's under DPW or under the school, but it's really, it's a
Under
it's a
itself.
bigger thing than that. And to have it of quality, it's, you know, and I'm not necessarily on board with the whole, you know, world-class park and rec stuff. I'm
Yeah.
not for that. If we could just have good middle income community park and recs, that'd be great.
So
Well, you know,
I,
they handled,
so-
hold on, John, they handled the beaches, they handled the cleaning of the beaches, they handled the maintenance of the bathhouses, they handled the septics, they handled all that stuff, they handled the scheduling of whoever wants to be on the, you know, the fields or the beaches for any particular function. They handled the maintenance of the fields, the baseball fields out there. They handled the mowing, they handled all that stuff and made sure everything was coordinated in one place. It was a department unto itself with its own like 5 or 6 employees. They had seasonal people in the summer. When it left that model, which we fought, I was involved with that 20 some odd years ago. I don't even know when now. This worked out perfectly. Never a snag, never a problem. We knew who to call if there was something broken at the bathhouses at the Little League fields. We built the fields we paid for them, but that's different. But the town took it over. This is not something that's small, I agree with you, Campbell, that can be farmed out to any particular place and have nobody pay attention to the things that the Park and Rec used to be in charge of. It worked perfectly. It worked smoothly. This has been a nightmare since they shut it down and they took the funding away and they threw it to the wolves. It's not just for the year-round population. It's to keep our beaches clean. It's to keep everything running for the people that come here, as well as us who use the same facilities. This is insane. The DPW has already messed up the fields multiple times. The CPC is not happy with the new fields that we spent $2 or $3 million on, the turf field and the other field. They've already messed them up a couple of times. They've had to reseed them again. This is insanity. I don't know, John, where do you think she's going with this?
so let's take a step back. Obviously, this has to go through town meeting. I mean, this is reorganization of some sort. I don't know that anything is set in stone. This is just where Libby thought this was going. So I would say how this is going to be reconciled with Maria Zoda's article and how this is going to be reconciled with the existing bylaw, I'm not sure. I think that whatever it is going to take, well, whatever, it's going to take some work to make any of these changes happen. And so I would say keep your ears up to listen, because I think we're going to be hearing more about this in the upcoming weeks, et cetera, while the warrant's being finalized. That's my guess on where we're headed with this. Yes,
Well,
Cam.
yet again, this is the
A
issue
quick-
with-
Hold on, Linda.
Okay.
Go ahead. Cam.
I just have a quick question, because if this is being put together as a warrant article, I'm assuming it's being put together by the town manager to be presented and approved by the Board of Selectmen at a public meeting. Is that,
Yes, that's how that works.
does it have to go somewhere along those lines?
Yeah.
Yeah, and for those who know better than I think this would have to involve the school committee too, to a degree, because of their relationship with the community school. So I
Except
don't
the
know
school
where
committee
they
is
stand
separate.
on this either.
The school committee is separate from this. And we went through this with John Mickelson many years ago when I was involved with the school councils. The school committee is separate from the community school. It happens to be in the school on and off,
Mhm.
but they're separate entities. The school committee does not fund the school committee. So, I mean, they don't fund the community school. There's a weird relationship between the two. It's not under the school committee's auspices necessarily. This is why it's not a good thing. And I agree with Campbell, we're taking town funds and putting it into the community school, which is not really part of the school. There's a whole mess here involved. And this is nuts. I just got to go back to this is crazy. And what does Maria Zoda's article actually do? I pay no attention to what she does, but what does that actually do?
Excuse me. So Linda, that article is a request that the town hire or appoint a director for specifically Park and Recs, whether it's an assistant director under the
Rob or
DP,
somebody, yeah.
yeah, under the head of the DPW, but she's looking to fund a position. I don't think she stated where the funds came from, which may be part of the article review from town council. So she may need to find that, but it's specifically to create the position of director, assistant director of Park and Rec.
Okay, because
That-
how it disappeared was that they took the funding away. The department was technically still there under state law and in the charter. But what they did is they emasculated it by taking the funding away, which cut out their employees, it cut out their ability to actually function. But it's still here. So the body is still here.
Right.
It doesn't have any underpinnings, any staff or any funding. If the funding were put back, then we could keep going with the model that we already had that worked so well. It's the fact that it got stripped of all the funding that killed it, but technically it is still here. That's the problem.
Yes, Campbell.
Okay, so I'm gonna bore people because I've spent too many hours in the weeds on this thing. So just for a little background on it, in 1960, the town at town meeting established a Park and Rec Commission consisting of 5 unpaid members who
Right.
shall be resident taxpayers of the town of Nantucket. This was, this Park and Rec Commission was established under Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 45, subsections 14 and 18, which had to do with playgrounds and who can use playgrounds. Okay, so as far back as 1960, town voters were willing and desired a Park and Rec Commission, a functioning Park and Rec Commission. In 1961, the town established a revolving fund for Park and Rec purposes. Then under Chapter 159, then in 1962, Chapter 15, I can't find these chapters, but anyway, from 62, the town authorized to borrow money for the Park and Rec purposes. In 1965, under Chapter 169, Acts of 1965, the town, when I say that, I mean the voters, established a Board of Public Works. In 1987,
Good.
the Park and Rec Commission was put under the Public Works, Department of Public Works, which was overseen by the Board of Selectmen. And
Campbell-
all of
Campbell, stay there for a second. When did the Parks and Rec come into being as we knew it before 1987? What was the year we established that?
1960.
No, there was it changed from a volunteer to a regular department, and I thought it was
I
back in
wasn't,
the early 80s. I should know, I should remember because I was involved with that, but it was somewhere before 1987. All right, so I'll just go with 87 for now.
yeah, I could not find anything referring, and I've got a couple things like that. Like, how did you end up getting rid of this one or bringing it in without it going?
She
You know,
took the
without-
funding away. 1987 is correct when we established the formal Parks and Rec Department.
Right.
Only, what, 5 years ago, they stripped the funding and that killed it.
Well, they also, but more importantly, Linda, they stripped authority.
Yes,
That's
they
what
gave it to Kara, and that's when things
I
started
don't-
going over the edge.
There was a true power shift in the 2007 thing.
Yes,
And it's the one that I've pointed out before, where the power of appointments. And one of them that they refer to doesn't do anything but change what you call the town manager from town administrator to town manager. So it's just verbiage. The
Yep.
next one, 4.3, is where they really shift the power to the town manager for appointments. Now, what I'm trying to investigate, because I haven't been able to figure it out, is that, that proposal in 2007 had a negative recommendation from FinCom as well as from the Board of Selectmen.
Interesting.
So I'm trying to figure out how or if that article was called at the 2007 town meeting. I believe it's Article 44. If that was called and voted on separately, or if it was part of a package that was approved as recommended. You know how we do that at the beginning of the meeting and everything's approved, and then I'm trying to figure out, because I don't know why it would be called.
Campbell, it wouldn't have been called by itself. What it was in line, it was in Article 8, which is the budget, and it was zeroed out.
Well, for that one, but the power of appointment that took the power away from,
Well, that was a charter change. That was, I was involved with that also. I fought it.
but that's where we're having the problems in the charter, is that whole,
Yes, they gave her the power to appoint several, and Rick, I think you were on the board then, maybe. They gave her.
Linda, I
power
was.
to
The
appoint.
board agreed, the board has the power to delegate committee appointments
Yeah,
as it so chooses. And in the case of Park and Rec, the board, perhaps unwisely, but it did pass a resolution to pass that authority to the town manager. The Board of Selectmen can always rescind that authority and take it back anytime it so chooses.
well, what I'm speaking of is a charter, how it affected the charter and that whole mess up that we have in the charter. I'm just saying, not the funding for Park and Rec, but the power behind it and the accountability, right? Because the select board is accountable to the voters and a town manager is not.
So I'm just going to interject. I think this is all excellent. I think this is very, very informative. And I think this may be something that we should sort of investigate further, if you'd like, or sort of put together in a memorandum. But we have a couple other things on the agenda to try to get moving with. But go ahead, Campbell.
So what I'd like to have approval to write a note to, and CC you, John, to write a note to the town clerk to further investigate the voting on this particular article. I think it could clarify some things if somehow it was adopted without actually being voted.
well, as I say, it wasn't, I don't believe it was a separate article. I believe it was in Article 8. Or the change in power, yes, was a separate article because it had to be. Now, let me think about that for a second, because I did fight it. Rick, it was a warrant article about transfer of power, was there not?
When you say transfer of power, do you mean from the appointment issue, Linda?
Yes, and I believe we spoke about it at town meeting.
Well, people might have, but my recollection, which, these things are always fraught to discovery, is
Oh, no,
that
no, hang on, I
there
know.
was no need, there
Yeah.
was no need to go to town meeting to change the appointment process of the Park and Rec Commission Board. It happened at the Board of Selectmen level, and they delegated that authority. That was it, period.
Hold on. In 2007, there was a warrant article to put certain departments under town administration.
Right,
And
that's
The zoning board was one. The Parks and Rec was one. There were 4 or 5. That's the article you're looking for, was the warrant article that took certain independent departments like the zoning board, because I was on the zoning board. I was the administrator, under town administration where they had not been under town administration before. That's
Correct.
the article you're looking for.
Can I clarify that?
council on,
Linda, let me just clarify. That's true. You can look for that all you want, but that's not related to the appointment of the commissioners of the Park and Rec.
It was,
Commission.
Rick, you know why?
No, it's related to the supervision of the staff members.
Yes, but also who appoints who came after that. And that's when Libby was given by the Board of Selectmen. After that transfer of these departments, Libby was given the power to do X, Y, and Z. Boards were no longer able to protect, I know, Rick, from personal experience, the boards were no longer able to do their own staff.
This is all very good and useful, but I think that this is something we should be taking sort of as a memorandum or offline. I don't know that we need to rehash this all
All right,
right now.
Campbell, if you want to look for it, that's what you're looking for, because that triggered everything else after that.
Right, it's Article 44 and Article 45 of the 2007.
Yeah.
Yes.
So ask the town clerk. I think that's a good
I
idea.
have all of that. I just would like approval to ask town clerk to help me find how the articles, whether Article 44 was part of a full passing as recommended, or whether it was called and passed as a separate piece,
It was
Not
discussed.
specifically
called.
Article 44.
It was called, it was discussed, because I remember personally discussing it. But there were no changes made to either one of them.
Okay. All right. So yeah, go ahead. Ask the clerk. See.
Yes,
Thank
you can email Laura. It's easier just to email them and they'll get back to you.
All right. So the only other update that I have for moving on with town administration, that Libby is going to try to get in touch with either Suffolk University or people at Mass Municipal, that they might be able to find some sort of call them summer interns, for lack of a better term, or interns who can put together who might be interested in putting together a project on the various forms of town government and what Nantucket looks like in terms of drawing up districts for representative, and how this all would work, and having them potentially interview constituents. I don't know if that's going to go anywhere at all, but it would be an interesting exercise for a entirely objective group sort of outside our island to come and look at things with fresh eyes. Again, I don't know that that's going to go anywhere. It may or may not be in the works. So just consider that just an FYI, an interesting update, when we talk next on, and I'll check in with Libby in the meantime. So.
John, I think that's a great idea. I'll tell you why. Let's track back to the taxation without representation. If we went to representative town meeting, when we went over to Falmouth,
Yep.
they contact the year-round and the seasonal people in their districts, which means that the concerns expressed by the seasonal people, let's say Brant Point, for instance, under that area plan, their interests would be represented at the representative town meeting by their person who is a voter. So you would actually get to have contact with your non-resident taxpayers in each one of these representative districts, where right now you don't. So that would be one of the advantages of going to representative, even if we have 100, is that
Campbell.
you can contact those people.
Campbell.
From what research I have two thoughts on it. One, anything that's directed by Libby is going to be biased from the get-go, so I'm not really in support of that. She has a very strong position. If we were looking at this in a mayor council type of thing, she would be considered a strong administrator. She has a lot of power. And okay, so under representative, my understanding is, yes, you do get, whoever's in your district, however you define that, can speak to its representatives. There's not just one representative. There's a number of them, and no one is obligated once they get to town meeting to vote in any specific direction based on what they've heard from other people. But one of the things I found most interesting about representative is the idea that it potentially has the potential to include greater diversity of voices.
Yes.
Based on the districts. That to me has more meaning as a town than, you know, whether people who choose to buy and sell homes here have, you know, a voice. That's not, but I do think we have a lot of up, under and non-represented people on the island that I think a representative format might capture and include, be more inclusive of. And I think that would be a better driver to why we would consider it. And I think there are some things that we can, in our final report, that we can suggest that are a little firmer than what we have in there now. And I think that it should be, I mean, this is it's a huge project. It takes a lot of education. You'd need to get a lot of people on board, not just, I mean, we're classic in this town for hiring outside people to come in and study us and then tell us what we want or need or should have. And then present it to the people who actually live here. And I'd like to see this have a different structure where it comes from more of a grassroots, ground up, getting the people who would be affected involved in it. And I'm not sure how that happens, but I could be more supportive of representative, because, you know, you have to have a charter change, determine districts and things. But I think we have the power within our group to do that, to look at some of these things and how they're done in other areas. Because I think Linda's pointed out one of the difficulties for here for determining districts is some people would have really small ones and some people would have really big ones. If you're in the Quidnet, Wauwinet, Shimo area, you know, that's going to be like huge to get enough actual voters.
Right, well, I mean, all good points, and I mean, thankfully, nothing is being finalized or done with this yet, but we'll see if anything pans out. But I think it's an very interesting point, Campbell, that you raised about having a sort of a grassroots way to do it to get those who are not typically represented. But that being said, because I'm trying to be cognizant of keeping us to an hour and 10 minutes or so. With this actually a great segue into our discussion of the next steps for the report to town meeting. So last thing that we did was we finalized our quote draft report to the select board for an update. I'm not sure what else the committee is looking to do necessarily with a lot of this. Not trying to say like, oh, our job is done. I'm just truly not sure. I know that Parks and Rec is this constant evolving question that we're always looking at each and every time. It feels like town meeting is always the very sort of sexy topic to talk about. And we're going to be looking at things for the non-voting taxpayers, see what the other towns and committees do. But in terms of any other next steps, which is actually in addition to item 7 on our agenda, which is this unresolved items on the topics to investigate list. Is there anything else that we want to add or start doing or feel that we should be in a position to do for a town meeting, which I understand is now pushed until June? Campbell.
My only thing was, I think I sent you 2 flow charts that currently exist. I have run into some others that other towns have that are much more explanatory. So under topic 2, organization, I know that we suggested that they do a better job of it. But maybe we could include some examples of what a better job would look like. I think part of what our piece there is trying to get to, if you, as a person, if you have a complaint or you have a issue, you know, where do you fit in? Where do you start on that chart?
Right.
I think that's part of what we were trying to get to with the chart. It's not so much, you know, here's a flow chart. It's how do you flow back up, you know? How do you get from an issue, whether it's with the HDC or, I don't know what
Yeah,
people have.
what type of resolution? What the path for sort of if you're aggrieved in any way? Yeah. Yes, Rick.
Just a general comment on our approach here, a number of these issues, if you look at that issues paper and look at our report to the select board, we seem to be saying these are within the power of the select board to act. And we're raising them because they've been issues of concern to citizens or to us, such as the one we're talking about right now.
Yep.
And I think we have a kind of a philosophical thing we need to all agree upon or vote on even. And for example, organization charts, some charters require the management to submit their organization charts in sufficient detail to their select board once a year. And that's one way you try and enforce an
Interesting.
action such as Campbell's discussing. Or we can say, it would be a good idea if you do that, and we stop. And I think there's a difference there, and it's easy enough to make recommendations. Whether or not they're going to be implemented, and some of these are pretty easy, is a different matter. And so
Right.
we've got to decide which course we're taking on these.
Okay, that's fascinating. I don't think I knew that. That's an interesting way.
I mean, right now, we've only made one, I think, well, two votes. One, the audit committee, and Teresa Williams' article. Everything else is, we've had a big discussion and we've said, I think someone else might be able to take care of this, or it's been a discussion point, and we stopped.
Mhm.
That's my impression.
Campbell.
I was just gonna say, I would vote for it becoming a requirement under the job to be done annually, especially with the way, we're undergoing so many changes and new committees are put in, so I think that would be great, and it would start to create some level of accountability to the people from the manager.
I'm happy to bring this up as, I don't want to sound like I'm punting, but to bring it up as a discussion. In other words, take the list that Rick had of or I don't mean to be picking on you, Rick, but I think you were the one who originally drafted the topics to investigate list. But going through those and seeing how we add teeth to them, if that's what the committee wants to do, that is perfectly. I mean, that's a way to sort of. I mean, we've made enough sort of suggestions, and this would be a way to sort of force the suggestion, which, I mean, it seems as though we can give as many, hey, why don't you guys handle this? And we get nowhere with sort of our polite recommendations. So it's a way to actually affect the change.
For
Can you
that,
get that list again, sent out again?
Yeah, it was attached to in the last email that I sent, but I can gladly
Okay, so
resend it
I
and we can
just like to
start
put that in file. All right.
start firing it off.
here, I can, I think I can,
I've got it. I just put it into a file.
Yeah.
oh, okay. Because I think that would, like you said, John, with the kind suggestions that we have, I think moving from there into something more determinative.
Forceful.
That
You know,
this,
I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean that you actually have something with teeth behind it.
in the end, that's what people are looking for. They're not looking for one more thing to think about or investigate. They're looking for someone who has and goes, okay, this is the way this should be done. Bang, there
Done.
we are. So I would like to vote on that.
I think
As Rick suggested, that we either vote to formulate the wording on such a charter
So-
change.
so. Can I make a suggestion then that what we do is we take the list and we take a look at the topics for next time and see which ones we could put into the charter, because I think there are some that we don't want in there. I think, but
No, I think that's probably true. I
Yeah.
think, for example, I corralled some of these sometime,
yeah,
2 years ago. The
Yeah.
organization sections of, I think, 2 or 3 towns charters.
Yep.
And I've got them someplace and I can resurrect them and send them around. So some of that background to help us think it through might be helpful. So whatever I have in my files, I'll dig out for redistribution.
that would be great, Rick. Yes, Campbell.
So I think just because I have it right in front of me, I think we should sort of go through and check it off now, because we're going to do a little bit more on the basic form of government. Do a little bit more on organization with the organizational chart. I
Yeah,
think came to audits, haven't we? We already made suggestions that were adopted to the audit committee. Right?
yeah.
So that's out because we've already done that. So that's done. Code enforcement, I think we put something together for that. Linda, do you recall whether we finished that or not?
I don't
I don't think we
did.
went too far there.
Yeah,
No.
Okay. How about the election and appointment of committees? Do we think they've made enough adjustments after the Concom thing to cover this?
Not really. That was just a procedural issue.
Okay, so we might want to find out what other towns are doing for election and appointment to committees. HDC charter, I believe we made a definitive on that. Right, that's going to
Yeah.
this something. So I don't think that's something to continue pursuit of. The town government study committee, is the role clear enough to be a charter requirement?
I think we can add some more to this, frankly,
Okay.
because of the idea of potentially having a standing committee for that town administration would have. I think it's at least.
Okay,
Whether or not
so
we do anything is up to debate, but I wouldn't just put it away just yet.
that's great. The licensing commission, if I recall, we had decided that as far as licensing, that was already taken care of. And if the board wanted to create other committees about that, they had the power already to do that without further changes.
I think that's right.
And then establishing a parking commission, I think that's already been done and
Yeah.
dealt with. As far as establishment of a sewer commission, I believe our recommendation was that they already have the ability to do that, and that the implications need to be further investigated.
Yeah.
And it was really not, our government study was really not the place for that. How better to integrate Wanacommet and airport operations with the town. I think someone had said that they already have a way around the funding, right, Linda? That was their big thing.
Hold on, I had to go talk to my electrician. What was that last question?
It was-
Um,
Go ahead.
On how better to integrate Wanacommet and airport operations with the town. I think that was, they already have found a way to fund things without being held up by town meeting. Is that correct?
That's my understanding. I don't know how that worked out through Brian, but they figured out something without having to do that warrant article, but still, there's still a perception that once the airport commission and the water commissions are elected or appointed in their particular cases, they have no reporting authority to town administration or the board of select or the select board. That was
For
the
what-
issue.
Yeah, I was gonna say, for what it's worth, I think we were dealing with two distinct issues here.
Yeah.
One was with, right, Rick, with Rafter on the getting funding for grants and through the select board. And the other one I thought was with like a union and salary issue between the employees there. Yes, Rick?
John, I just confirm, you're right,
Yeah.
that was a proposed article that then was sort of set aside because
Yeah.
it ran into political issues, as you might imagine, and the origination of that article came about because several people who worked on the town side felt that job descriptions and salary ranges within the water company and the airport were out of line with similar responsibilities within the town.
Right.
And this was an attempt to provide town administration or some combined way to make them more equitable.
Right.
Now, is that something we want to continue to investigate?
I don't know how to codify making them have more accountability to Libby and the select board, other beyond the appointment positions. Because they're under FAA stuff, there's certain things about airport commissions that we can and can't do, which is why in the charter, they're cut out in a certain
Right.
section. And the same thing with the water. It doesn't seem that there's enough accountability to Libby or enough reporting, enough, this is, again, is a procedural issue. I wouldn't know how to put that into a codification. warrant.
Okay, so can we say that we're?
Why
pretty-
don't we, again, I will agree in that case to circulate the article. So we
Great.
can all see what the attempt was specifically, because it's in writing.
Yeah,
Great.
let's do that.
Okay, so moving on, we'll keep that open. Review the role and charter provisions for Park and Rec. We're keeping
Oh,
that.
boy. Yep.
Move on.
Study the value of some kind of ombudsman or position to review issues. I think we did that. You've given a recommendation on it. Correct?
Yeah, I think that one's all done.
That one is done. And
Yep.
review the airport statute as an enterprise fund and the ramifications.
I think that's done.
I think that's done too, yeah.
Yeah.
And then,
Okay.
and then the only other one I'd add is possibly expanding the role of the non-voting taxpayers at
Taxpayers.
town meeting.
Some
Okay.
sort of procedural thing.
Yeah.
I think our biggest task, I think the biggest thing still open besides Parks and Rec, and they're in their
Yep.
own little bubble there, is the form of government.
Right.
I think that's the biggest
Right.
thing.
And I did some research on it. I have a pretty good article from Grafton where they were doing a comparative for their voters. It was printed in the newspaper. I could send that around if
Oh, yeah.
Take-
Please do.
take
Please
a
do.
look at. I have a couple things I could send around based on that. I would like to just get sort of a sense of the board here or committee. Of the 4 types of government that we're looking at, could I get sort of a raise of hands or an eye or something about which ones we'd want to pursue? There's the mayor council. Do I hear anything for mayor council?
Can I just say, I thought
Yeah.
there were limits on our ability to adopt
Yes.
some of these, so they're not all available.
Correct.
That's right. Because of the size of the community, we're X'd out until after the census maybe, but we're X'd out of one of them anyway.
Correct.
Well, we can be called a city because we have more than 12,000 voting residents. Not signed up, but we have them. So that does open up the mayor with a council or a town manager council situation. Then we have the representative town meeting. Is that something? Do I hear an eye on that?
Yes.
I get,
What is the purpose of?
yeah, what are we trying to get at here?
I'm trying to narrow down what we're looking at. for
Why would
options.
we,
In other
why
words,
would we not
as a
be,
board-
why would we not be, like, I thought what we're trying to do is educate, basically, at this next phase here, about the different options that are available. And I think, I mean, as a practical matter, there's no recommendation at this town meeting about considering a switch to one thing or another, correct?
That's not what I'm trying to get at. I'm trying to get a feeling of the board of which ones would we want to look into
All of the above,
most.
all of the above.
Except for the ones we don't
Except for
qualify
we-
for right now.
Yeah,
So,
but we,
Thing
I
a
think
really
as a
big-
as a
bit.
practical
We're not
matter, we know that there's a high likelihood following the results of the next census that we would qualify for any of the four.
Okay.
I mean, so I don't think we should eliminate anything at this stage.
So it's really just getting the education, which is what we've talked about, and or explaining what each type is.
I think, I mean, that's where I thought we were last. I don't
Right.
think that we were trying to narrow things for the voters. We want to
No.
educate the voters and let them
I don't
decide.
think we're there. Oh, yes, Rick, you had your hand up.
So the document we've distributed so far, essentially Curtis got it off the state website.
Yep,
So it's just a public document. And I think there are probably, if we can find them, people like I don't mean this group, but like the Conservation Law Foundation, they write pamphlets about issues.
Mm.
I'm sure we can find one or two more expansive and explanatory about the forms of government. And because that one sheet of paper, it seemed to me almost raised more questions than it answered. And so you have to sort of get down into some of the details but before you know what you're giving up or expanding into. So.
Campbell, you had your hand up.
Yeah, for a couple of things. One, just as a reminder, I had put out quite some time ago a chart of the options and the percentage of them, of the 4 options, the percentages that were taken. So 74% of the 351 towns in Massachusetts have open meetings. 9% have representatives. 3% do the council manager thing. 12% have the mayor. And I also had sent out a chart that gave you the populations that fell under each of these options. But just sort of as a reminder, I think what that says is that a majority of citizens in Massachusetts prefer to have some form of direct participation in their governance of their towns. That's sort of what I get from that. And while I get the whole education piece, I'm trying to get us to where we're actually coming up with information, because it's great to say education, but we don't have any information except for that one, little thing that's, and we have questions. Maybe that's where I'm going with this. Maybe what we want to be thinking about for the next meeting are what are the questions we would want answered under each form? Like, can citizens still do citizen warrants, or how are citizen warrants done? How does voting take place? I'm just trying to throw out some thoughts on, so that we have some things to
Sure.
question to compare under each.
What we're all going to get to. All right, well, why don't we, I think that's a good homework assignment for all of us. And I know, Campbell, you've got stuff to do with the town clerk. Rick's got other documents he's going to prepare for us. Why don't we all think of questions for our next meeting that we would like effectively answered, that we think that the, how do I want to phrase this? That the suspicious electorate would be asking if anyone ever proposed to change their form of town government. So we put on your conspiracy theory hats and come up with some good questions. So I think that is a good place sort of to stop for right now, because we've run over for our time. Any other business for right now?
And I have 3 Zoom meetings in a row here.
Lucky you.
Yeah, lucky me.
All right, so let's go on to the date and time of our next meeting. So school vacation week is next week. Do you want to try to do it a week after, first week in March, second week in March? I'm cognizant of people's travel schedules, but I'm also cognizant that we can all do this via Zoom.
I
So
think you're the only one that has, mine doesn't leave his room in the pandemic.
fair enough.
And you're the only one, I believe, that has small children still.
What?
Grandchildren. that
Tucker.
are being taught at home. Oh,
Come on.
Tucker, forgot about you.
All right, well, do you want to, let me pull up a handy calendar
Is
here.
anybody going anywhere for school vacation?
In theory, we're driving to Vermont, but we'll see.
Yeah, you're gonna have to quarantine coming back in. It's on that.
I know, we're not going anywhere. How about this? How about March 10th? Or the 10th or the 3rd? Your respective calls.
What dates were you saying?
Wednesday, March 10th or Wednesday, March 3rd.
I would prefer 10 a.m. on the 10th versus the 3rd.
Sounds good to me.
Okay,
Of course, prefer earlier, but
I could do
Whatever.
earlier.
I can do earlier too, actually. Let's say
Does that-
9 a.m.
yeah, earlier would be great because then I
Okay, we
can,
might even get Curtis that way too. Okay,
What time we want to do this?
9 a.m. Rise
I'm
and
not
shine.
happy with that.
Okay,
Correct.
all right. Well, I'll check in with Eric and make sure we can reserve the virtual meeting room or whatever. Yes, Campbell.
I just want to do one thing before we leave, and that is, what is the main topic for the next meeting? I think if we take our topics and we just deal with one each time. Do we want to do the government form that we were just speaking of next?
You mean when you say government form, do you mean the questions we were going to come up with, or focus on something else?
The list from the topics to investigate list.
Okay.
I just have to get it back up here.
Can I just make a
is
recommendation?
Yeah,
The
go ahead,
agenda-
Rick.
The agenda is usually set by the chair, and maybe the chair and vice chair could discuss the agenda items and agree. And I think the rest of us would probably be very pleased with that and
And
accept that recommendation.
what we'll do is we'll get it out well in advance so you have time to look at this.
Well, maybe we'll hear from Lauren by then. If we hear from Lauren by then.
Come on,
that'll take up
let's.
the whole meeting.
Hope springs eternal.
Hey, we
Um,
celebration then for the meeting.
Seriously.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, well, Campbell and I will work on the agenda and sort of the action items, and we'll circulate that. All
Okay.
right, may I please have a motion to adjourn at 11:22?
So
I'll
moved.
make that motion.
Okay, motion
Tucker
made
speaks.
and second, we're gonna do a roll call vote here. Campbell Sutton, Rick Atherton,
Aye.
Linda Williams,
Aye.
and Tucker Holland.
Aye.
And the chair, John Brescher, votes aye as well. All right, thank you all, I appreciate it, and we will be in touch soon.
Thanks.
Everybody stay
All right.
safe.
Agreed, wash those hands.